Fire Emblem Fates original soundtrack. So that to be clear, I've never heard this music before in my life, and so I'm going to be breaking it down, giving you insights, also enjoying it and having some fun along the way.
Yet the waters ever change, flowing like time. The path is yours to plow.
Overall, there's by and large this calm feeling with, you can hear the reverse sounds, the water, you can hear these little characters, these little mini stories that are getting told, but it's all in the nuance and it all feels very calm. And so there seems to be something going on here with time, reversal, inversion, but so far it's surprisingly calm compared to a lot of the Fire Emblem music we've heard so far on this channel. Let's see what happens next. Pass below. All this is reversed. Think of ourselves as being in F minor. And there's a classic, at least I'm going to call it classic, given how many times we've heard it, chord progression we've heard in OSTs, and that is 1's minor and then flat 2, going to be major 7. However, here, what's happening is the 1 isn't really minor. In fact, the 1 is actually sus4. And I'm not saying this whole piece was in the key of F minor, but just looking at that right there. Yeah, and that pulsing drum almost sounded like a basketball too. Quiet Burn coming up next. sus4 again. So serene. So serene. So it starts off with this D sus4. So if you don't know what a sus4 chord is, I'm going to teach you. And if you know what it is, I'm going to remind you, because sometimes, as one of my favorites, Alex Chamosi, says, sometimes we need to be reminded more than we need to be taught. To create a D7 sus4, we're going to have a D note, G, A, a C. And if we think about these in terms of scale degrees, we have 1, 4, 5, then flat 7. And then the next chord is going to be, I'm calling it the 5, A, D, E, and it's the same idea. It's 1, 4, 5, flat 7, relative to, you know, this being the 1. I think it's interesting because part of the feeling of this music so far is that sus4 sound. It's having a 1, a 4, a 5, and a flat 7 combined together. And yes, a lot of others going around it, but if I was to distill it down into like one chicken nugget size thing to give to you, which is kind of what these streams are, it's, there you go, it's a sus4 chord, and that sus4 sound with the 7, the 7 sus4, it feels kind of dreamy. It feels kind of, at least to me, it feels serene. All right, what adjective does that sound like to you? Quiet Burn, roar. Oh, yes. yeah. Love it. Awesome. I love the energy expansion too with the different arrangements. It's so cool to hear the same piece of music arranged in different ways. And it's also a masterclass and a perfect demonstration for you at home and me at home to understand and appreciate the skill of arrangement, where you take the same idea, but you dress it up in two different candy wrappers. Right? It's the same piece of chocolate. It's the same idea, but it's wrapped up in two different style wrappers. Like, one's just like Hershey's Kiss type thing. It's like silver, it's crinkly. The other one's just like this lint thing. It's like a little shiny. It's got some color on it. Both different. No way of wrapping an idea is right. It just comes down to what do you want to create. And there is a beautiful example of an arrangement. All right, let's keep this going with Watery Something. Oh. I mean, we're going to start as if we're in E flat major and we're going to see what happens. Okay. 4, major 7, 1, major 7. All right, so 3 sus 4. And then it's like a 7. Yeah, that had like a, it also had a 6 in it. It's like a 1. All right, let's keep this rocking and rolling with Dusk Falls. 3 ones. Oh, this is a different vibe, huh? It's going 1, flat 6, flat 7, to 4 major. So what that 4 does is the 4 actually highlights the use of the Dorian mode that's happening from here, here, fair enough. But then here we actually get the flat 6, which contrasts to scale degree natural 6, which is the third of 4. Really cool, really interesting. I love that flat 6, natural 6. Okay, here we go. Far Dawn. Love this. Ooh. That's fascinating. Oh, so cool. Come on now. This is sick. We're gonna let just the first part loop here. Oh, that is so cool. Here's what's really cool about this. All right, we've heard in so many OSTs, we've heard this chord progression. Something along the lines of... So many times we've heard this. So many times. And we've heard variations of it here, there, everywhere. This is a variation on that chord progression we have never heard before on this channel, to the best of my knowledge. And what is so cool is you can actually see, you can actually watch a genre evolve only through the foundational harmony. Like, all the arrangement, take that out. Just the foundational harmonies, you can see a genre evolving. And I think that that is so cool. Because what happens here is it's 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, straight to flat 6. 2, 3, 4 to 5, to 4, to 5, to flat 6, rivers in the desert chord. Oh, back to 1. That's where things really change. But like, oh my gosh, it's so cool. And here's the really cool part. The really cool part is right here. It's the rivers in the desert chord. That is the cool part. And if you're going, what do you mean rivers in the desert? In Persona 5, there's a song called Rivers in the Desert, and he uses that chord. And so I call it the Rivers in the Desert chord because that's the first place I heard that chord ever used like that. And so it stuck. So that's the Rivers in the Desert chord. And that right there sounds so cool in the context of this chord progression. All right, so let's check out this Far Dawn. I love that, developing of the, like, original idea motif thing here. Yes. There, again, this is a fragment of it, fragmentation. Love it. Developing it further. It's all one idea. It's all one motif being developed. Ah, love it. Yes. Oh, so cool. So guys, when I'm talking about a motif being developed, I'm not necessarily talking about a light motif. I'm not necessarily talking about something that represents a person, place, or thing. I'm talking about an idea, a musical idea, a motif. The definition of a motif is the smallest recognizable musical idea. So however small it is, you can still recognize it as being individual from other musical ideas. That is a motif. And so what we can hear is like, that is right there. That's actually more of a subphrase, if you ask me, because just the ba got used, that fragment of the motif. Well, you could say both is motif and one's fragmentation, which naturally means it can be smaller. But if we're defining a motif as being the smallest possible thing that you could recognize, then it's getting smaller. You can still recognize it. Then that's a motif. Then what do we call it? They go, it's still a motif. Right. It's a little bit of a gray area. And if you think this is confusing, just, yeah. that's kind of how it is. It's like it's not all cut and dry when we're talking about motifs and subphrases. And phrases, subphrases, motifs, a little squirrely to nail down. It's just the nature of the thing. When I'm talking about motivic development, I'm talking about they take one idea and then they make it longer. They change the rhythm of it. They keep the same notes, different rhythm. They keep the same rhythm, different notes. That is motivic development. It's you taking one idea and developing it. Go listen to like Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. Ba 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 bum, ba 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 bum. The idea is ba 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 ba. That's the motif. Ba 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 ba. And then he goes ba 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 ba. He just did the motif 3 times in a row. Now he's gonna do it again. Ba 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 ba. Again. Now here he goes again. Ba 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 bum bum bum. So it's one motif over and over and over and over again, played in different ways. That beautiful. You heard an E sus4 to an E5 add 9 to an F sharp minor 7 to an F sharp minor add 2. I'll tell you, I can't remember the last time I heard that, and no, it's not the same. It's not the same voicing as what you hear in the recording, but man, those are cool chords. Now, if you're wondering what I mean by voicing, what I mean is it is all the constituent parts, wrong order. So you can hear that it's directionally correct, but it's not 100% correct, as in it's not the same exact sequence of notes, but it's the same series of notes, but just the wrong sequence. For those of you who are more mathematically minded to understand the difference between what you hear, and if you're thinking to yourself, oh, it sounds close, but it's not quite, well, that's why. This piece of music starts off with the chord progression. 1, 2, flat 2, major 7. I just want to bring that up too, because we talked about so many OSTs have this, and it was so interesting to hear at the beginning of this OST, the riff and the play on this classic, I'm going to call it a classic video game chord progression. I mean, I've heard Steve Vai do it. I've heard David Bowie do it in reverse for Space Oddity. Right? 1 to flat 2. All right, cool. And just the way this chord progression is presented, I cannot stress enough how tasteful and masterful this is. So we've heard this chord progression a bajillion times in a bajillion different places. We've heard versions of this here, there, everywhere. We've never heard it like this before. It is so gorgeous, so nuanced, so delicate. It reminds me of, have you ever seen that really thinly crocheted lace that like someone crocheted? It wasn't a machine, a person crocheted it, and it's like super thin. That's what that reminds me of. It's like such a delicate handling of the harmony. Check out this next one. What I want to talk to you about is the first section, the A section. What's happening? It's a drone on C, which means there's a C underpinning everything. And what you can hear is that there's this, maybe a French horn, and it's not going to sound exactly like it because there are a million instruments playing. But it's the essence of it. It's the essence. Something like this. There's a C note under everything, and then there's just one note changing over the C note. And because that one note changing over the C note, that creates all the nuance and all the emotion you could ever want. And I think what's really interesting too is the use of the A flat and the A natural over the C in this instance. Because you hear the A flat, that's a somber tone. Whereas the C over the A natural isn't quite as sad, but we hear both in the same piece. So what interesting pull on the time there. Something going on with time in this particular battle is there's something where someone gets an odd number of moves that you don't expect, or there's some time-based thing that you don't know about at first. And I ask this because there's something going on with the time, and I am going to explain it to you. With modern music technology, you have a binary and also a continuum. You have quantized and unquantized, and we can think of this as being a binary. It's either yes or it's no. Now, we can also ask the question of how quantized is it, right? So we have a continuum. We say, where on the continuum is it quantized? So what quantized means is, for example, and you can actually see this in digital audio workstations, which is the software we use to create music. You'll actually see a grid, much like the grid you see here. And on this grid, you can have things line up with each other. So you can have a drum sound here, line up with the guitar sound here, line up with a bass here, line up with another drum here, which lines up, and then, maybe the singer floats a little bit. And I'll talk about what that means in a second. And then you have the next drum sound here, the next guitar sound here, and so on. And so all of the sounds happen at the same exact time as each other. And this is quantized. They're perfectly lined up. We could also call it snapped to a grid. Unquantized means there's going to be some variation to the left and to the right of when the sound starts. So for example, this sound might actually start here as opposed to right here. And this sound might start here as opposed to right here. And so you get this variation in where things land. And so naturally, when humans make music, it's a little unquantized, except for some humans who are absolute freaks of nature and amazing musicians who literally can play like machines. And we're very happy for them. For the rest of us, there's going to be a natural amount of variation between where just me playing guitar, there's going to be some variation. In fact, a lot of variation. But there's going to be some variation between the amount of time between sounds. It's not going to be the same exact every single time. If you know about health, it's kind of like heart rate variability. It's not the same exact every time. It's a little different every time. So what we just heard is we heard some instruments that were quantized. We heard several instruments that were not quantized, and we even heard things that were just totally not connected to the grid in a way that would be instantly recognizable relative to the other music that was going on. And that's why I kept going, oh, wow, that's so cool. It's because there was these moments where things were just totally separated from the grid. There's these moments where there was this beautiful quantized symmetry and this sharing space with this unquantizedness too, and having both together at the same time can really create a lot of interesting nuances and feeling in the music. A little callback there. Right, which is a motif we heard in the past couple tunes here. So really, 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 really cool to hear that here, but now brought back in this more quiet, atmospheric, spacious way. That beautiful motif. That right there, that's the motif. The motif. So we have. That's so cool. Oh, that's so cool. Oh, that is so cool. So cool. So cool. Oh my gosh, that was such a cool rendition of that there motif. Just that little down those going in there, so just it was like a really high organ. So, have you ever tried to end something that feels a little triumphant, or you want it to feel triumphant? You can copy these chords that were used right here. This is going to be in the key of G major, but you could use this in any key. You have 1, flat 2, back to 1, to flat 5, which we have heard before for sort of triumphant sounds. And then back to 1, flat 2, to 1. There you go. Now, we're not talking about the arrangement, but the underlying harmony. If you're finding this video helpful, I have tons of courses in my community for gamers who want to create their own music. If you want our help to create your own music or to build a professional portfolio on Spotify, YouTube Music, and Apple Music, or you want help composing your first original soundtrack, click the link in the video description and apply for our Gamer Music Creator program now. There are tons of compositions and songs we've already helped gamers just like you create and release professionally. No previous musical experience is required. You can be a total beginner and we will show you every step of the way through creating and releasing your own music. You also do not need to buy extra gear. We give you everything you need from day one if you are accepted into our program. Click the link in the description and apply now. Oh, augmentation. Augmentation. I'm going to explain that to you in a second. That's so cool. Augmentation. Check this out. I want to introduce you to a concept called augmentation if you don't know it. Augmentation is one of the ways you can develop a motif. So here's the motif. Here's augmentation. It's going to be the same notes, same order, but all the notes are going to take longer. So augmentations, when you take a motif you're used to hearing at a certain speed, and then you lengthen it, and then you play it back. Now, there is a case to be made that wasn't pure augmentation there. Augmentation is, for example, you take an eighth note is going to become a quarter note's worth of time. Quarter note is going to become a half note's worth of time. And this is 2x augmentation. Now, you could do 4x augmentation. So that's when an eighth note is going to become a half note, and a quarter note becomes a whole note, and so on. Violet hair. Oh. Either I'm out of tune. Oh, this is not an A440. Basically, what's going on in this is the pitches that are used, the actual notes that are used in this piece of music that we just listened to, are not the same notes that were used in 99% of the rest of this OST. Like, how cool is that? Think about it. Basically, how sound works. Sound is waves. Okay, and depending on how big the waves are, that's when sound is louder. And when the waves are smaller, the sound is more quiet. So here's a quiet sound relative to this, which is a loud sound. Now, what happens is if the sound wave vibrates slower, that's going to be a lower sound. If the sound wave vibrates faster, that's going to be a higher sound. And so the standard for measuring how many times a sound wave goes from here back down to here, so how long it takes it to do an S curve, we call that a hertz. And that's how many times it does that per second. So A440, the 440 references the hertz. So it's saying it cycles from here to here 440 times per second. And that's what creates an A440. Now, what we just listened to was not A440. It might have been A3 or A435, maybe. Or maybe it was A432. But it was not A440, whereas the rest of this OST we listened to was A440. And we talk about A440, and then we extrapolate where all the other pitches are going to be relative to that A440. All right, so that is just delightful. And that repeats, goes flat 6 to flat 7, and that repeats, which then brings us back to 1. So that sounds like this. Look in there. All right, I want to take this opportunity to make sure you fully understand what arrangement means. I want to give you guys an example of this, where I'm going to play the same thing on the guitar in 2 different ways. And this is going to summarize the difference between the two. Here's the same melody. I'll play it one more time. Now, it's going to sound a little bit different. What you just heard was the same exact melody, but it sounded radically different. It wasn't different in the sense that the actual pitches were different. The pitches were still vibrating at approximately the same frequency. The difference was how the notes were presented. One had no distortion. The other had distortion and sustain and delay, a whole bunch of effects on it that changed the character of it. It changed the quality of the sound. It changed the timbre of the sound. T-I-M-B-R-E, the timbre. And so in this way, you can take something that's played by a clarinet and then give it to an electric guitar, and they both play the same notes, but it sounds and feels radically different. On top of that, you could, let's say, have only one drum pattern playing the first time, and the next time have 3 different drum patterns all going at the same time. It's still the same thing. It's happening at the same speed. Like if you look at the duration of time for all of the twofers in all of the Fire Emblem, they all have the same exact duration. Like the No Justice and No Justice Fire are both 5 minutes and 54 seconds. It's because it's the same piece 2 times in a row. One has the energy dialed up, the other one doesn't. And how do they dial it up? By changing the sounds, by adding in more instruments, by adding in faster elements around it, by adding in more elements. Elements is going to be either an instrument or an instrument doing more things. And that's how you make an arrangement that sounds different. And I'm trying to do this using words and keeping it very basic and fundamental. It sounds like we're going dark, and that's because of that Phrygian sound. These are all the notes that are used. So this is the correct notes out of sequence. And the sequence we just heard in was da, ba, 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 2, 1. And we're going to be listening out for this Phrygian sound. And the Phrygian basically means that we have the 1, flat 3, and flat 2 all in a row. And then, yeah, we'd have 4, 5, flat 6, flat 7 to complete the actual Phrygian mode. We can say it's Phrygian-like, or it's headed in a Phrygian direction, or it's feeling Phrygian out. This sounds like a boss. Okay, let's talk about how did I know that this was a boss theme, or how did I guess that this was a boss theme? And I was like, this sounds like a boss theme. Why did I say that? There's a couple of reasons. Number one, the speed. It's going so much faster than a lot of the music we've heard so far. Honestly, that's about it. It's the speed. It has to do with the speed. To think about like Megalovania, super fast. I mean, it's just a boss theme off the top of my head. Super fast. So we can always think speed, not always, but oftentimes means boss theme. Oh, yes. Going to a 6 minor 7, flat 6, flat 2. So spicy. So yummy. And then in there as well, we heard were a very interesting use of the chord progression we've heard in many different OSTs, which is the 1, flat 7, flat 6, 5 minor, 4 minor, 5 minor, flat 6, 5, then it changed the second time around. But that is a classic chord progression. Delicious. That was a tasteful piece of music if ever I heard one. we call this? At a very simplified level, have 1, flat 6, flat 7. Plus 2 add 4 will do it. That gets us the sonic information. Pretty cool stuff. Okay, let's keep this going. I want to Alright, so that's really interesting. Okay, so in the key of C major, I want to talk you through this. Just some fascinating stuff. Okay, so it's 1, 2, 5 over 6 to 5 of 4. Then instead of going to 4, here it actually goes to what we could describe as 5 of 5. But it's 5 of 5 in first inversion. 5 of 5. I actually don't even want to call this 5 of 5 because the way it acts, like, it's 5 of 5 and it's over sharp 4. So it's like oh, that's really cool. And then I think it's 4 or 5 that brings us back home. Oh, it's just a 4 to 1. Yeah. And then it's just 4 1 that brings us home. That's cool. That's a really beautiful chord progression. Something to look at here is just like the descending bass line that's implied here. So it's like 1, 7, 6, 2, 1. Maybe we could think of it as 5. 5th is in the lowest note. Then we have sharp 4. We're down a half step. And then it goes to 4. And then back to 1. There's like this descending movement the whole way through this chord progression. Really cool stuff. The legato followed by the staccato is what does it. Perhaps indeed. Yeah. Bi dum ria del bi bwa del dum don di dum dum dum. Yeah. Legato means linked, connected in Italian, and staccato like separated. Something along those lines in terms of its meaning, but the staccato is a short sound where you can hear space between every single word. Whereas legato stretches out together and there's no space at all between any of the sounds of the words, and the voice just keeps going on and on and on. So there's a lesson for you. Staccato versus legato. Great groove. Contrast here, the legato here. Long, elegant, flowing. Oh, yes. Ooh. That's an interesting groove. Now not quite as flowing, it's a little bit more bouncy. I'm going to talk a little bit over this, so I want to point out different areas of contrast. Now, there's contrast to the first section we just heard. Now, more flowing. You still have that element of that we just heard, but that flute's now coming in. It's like got this vocal thing. It's creating contrast. Now everything gets long and flowing. Everything's connected and flowing. What a contrast to everything before. Little bell still reminding us of that rhythmic thing at the very beginning. And now it's like a little bit of flowing, a little bit of the rhythmic. Contrast. Texture. Contrast. So, the lesson that I'm trying to get through to everyone, including myself on this, because we all need to be reminded more than we need to be taught. That's a saying from Alex Hormozy, is that contrast is key. And it doesn't matter if you're composing, producing, writing songs, at every level of the music, contrast is key, because if it's all samey, okay, there's a type of cuisine. It's called American Chinese food. It's not actually Chinese food. It's its own thing. It's American Chinese food. And if you ever happen to come to America, if you outside America, if you're not from America, I recommend just as a cultural experience to go in, buy a couple dishes, just try it, because it's like nothing else. And one of the downsides of American Chinese food is that when you buy a dish, it's going to be just that dish, and generally the entire dish tastes, it's like the same thing for the whole dish. Whereas, let's say if you go to a French restaurant, you sit down, you're going to have, maybe as your main plate, there's going to be some type of starch, some type of vegetable, some type of meat. There's these different elements on the plate. Whereas with the Chinese food, all those elements are combined together for the entire meal. So it's like every bite is the combination flavor for many dishes. Not all, but for many. And so something can happen with Chinese food where it kind of feels samey after you get like halfway through eating your meal. It's the same flavor over and over again. And without contrast, things can feel a little samey. So contrast is key, as you could hear in this piece of music. There it is. I did it. And I'm adding the sharp 4 in because we heard it in the melody. But it's like a 1-5 add 9. Oh, how pretty is that? A little bit of a pretzel shape to get my hand in, so it's probably the first time I've ever played that chord in my life. How cool is that? That doesn't get to happen every day. So thank you for being on this journey with me for that experience, a moment in time. Astra Proc says, what is your #1 piece of advice for getting better at finding chords by ear? Well, my first piece of advice would be to isolate and memorize. So pick 2 or 3 chords that you're going to memorize the sounds of, isolate just those 3 and memorize the sounds of them so you can recognize them in any context. And then add 1 chord. And then add another quality. And when I say add 1 chord, I mean a quality of chords. So like major, minor, diminished, augmented, dominant 7, major 7, minor 7, half diminished, or minor 7 flat 5. 2 names, same thing. You fully diminished 7, and then you can start getting into the sus2s, the sus4s, the add 2, add 4, add 6, just which you can also just call 6. And yeah, once you can recognize the different qualities of chords, then get into recognizing them in context and at speed, because that is the tricky part. All right, let's check out No Cure for Something. So, if I'm not mistaken, oh, that's brass. So part of what's making this sound silly is the use of woodwinds. Like, we hear clarinet, we might hear bassoon in there. We might also, in all honesty, be hearing like a bass clarinet that I'm just not recognizing because I don't know the sound well enough of a bass clarinet versus something else to tell you what's what, or a baritone clarinet. I don't even know the names that well. Once we start getting into that kind of territory. Did also hear something that was brass, but they were all aerophones, is another thing that we could look at in terms of what's in common between all these instruments that create this sound. An aerophone is an instrument where sound is produced using air. So in Valiant Illusion, what we heard was actually similar in the sense that there's these stacked fifths. All right, let's check out Light on a Window. All right, so what's wild about Light on a Window is it's exactly the same chords as we had in whatever this one was. And I think what's interesting to think about this too is both of them also had sharp 4 present in the melody. So both of them, like, I'm putting them in the key, like I'm saying this is the key of E, really it's the key of B. I'm saying it's the key of B, really it's the key of F sharp, right? It's the, well, not really it's the key, but it is the key of E, but it's like it's using the Lydian mode, which is all the notes of a B major scale. And this B here was using all the notes of an F sharp major scale. So Levi Phillips asks the question, do any of these songs follow a specific mode / how do modes work? Every single one of these songs so far that we've listened to today has followed at least one particular mode. Sometimes that mode is just the Ionian mode that we'd call the major scale, or indeed the Aeolian mode that we'd call the natural minor scale. However, some of them have also followed the Mixolydian mode, or the Lydian mode. I'm not sure if we've heard Dorian so far today, but I'll give you an example of Dorian mode so you can understand how modes work. So in the case of a major scale is constructed with a series of whole and half steps. Now you can actually visualize the whole and half steps with these metal lines on my guitar. From one metal line to the next metal line is a half step. From one metal line skipping a metal line, so we're going every other metal line, is a whole step. So if I go in a series that goes like this, whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half, and I play that all in a row, that sounds like do, a deer, a female deer, ray, a drop of golden sun, which is a major scale. And the major scale, even though we call it the major scale, is also a mode. It's technically, you could call it the Ionian mode. Now, what gets interesting is if we think about the names of these notes, we have C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Now, what we can look at here that I've written for you on the whiteboard is that we have 1 starting where 2 was, 2 where 3 was, 3 where 4 is, 4 where 5 is, 5 where 6 is, 6 where 7 is, 7 where 8 is, and then 8 happens here, where if we were to repeat, 2 would happen. So, and what we have here as well is the series of whole and half steps is kept. So we're starting on 2, we're doing whole, but then 2 to 3 is a half, whereas here, 1 to 2 to 3, we had 2 whole steps. So when we have this means a whole step. Remember, we're skipping a metal line on the guitar, and this is a half step, meaning we're going just straight to the next metal line on the guitar. So if we think about it from this perspective, when we start on D, we're going D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D. And so it's the same notes as the C major scale, but it's played starting on a D and ending on a D instead of starting on a C and ending on a C. And because we start and end on the D gives context to all the other notes, which makes it feel as though it's in a mode. And indeed, if we stress different notes from the C major scale, if we stress landing on a D, an A, and an F over and over again, especially on strong beats relative to whatever time signature we're in, it's going to feel like we're in a D Dorian mode. So in summary, a mode is when you take all the same notes as another scale and you simply emphasize different notes than you would normally emphasize from the other scale to get a different sound, feeling, texture, quality out of that same exact series of notes. If you want to understand more about strong and weak beats with music theory, I invite you to check out the Music Theory for Gamers playlist I have here on the channel. You can check that out, and that is for free for you. All right, let's keep going with how can that be? Number one, we actually hear the music saying, how can this be? True story. We actually hear the music saying, how can this be? And it's not a how can this be as in like someone just won the lottery and they're excited. It's a how can this be, and it's sad. It's not favorable. It is an unfavorable being that is being questioned. So check this out. Right there, we hear how can this be? How can this be? And how do we hear how can this be? Well, right here, we have what's called an augmented chord. And an augmented chord is a questioning sound. This sounds like something that's unresolved. It sounds like a question. Questions are unresolved things that ask for answers, which gives a resolution to the question. So how can this be? Now, the resolution on the how can this be, it's not a happy sound. This would be a more happy sound. So if it was, how can this be? It'd be like, how can this be? She loves me. How can this be? I just won the lottery. How can this be? I'm finally driving my matte black Cybertruck with my 2 kids in the back to see my parents. Like, it's whatever the thing is you want in life, that's the thing. Now, that's not what's happening here. What's happening here is, how can this be? It's sad. How can this be? So the music is actually saying, how can this be? And showing us that whatever's being is. Here we go with Spreading Shadow, which is what I call putting Nutella on bread. Let's check this out. But check this out, right here. Right there, we have 1 to flat 2. Now, we've heard 1 to flat 2, among other notes, for boss-related activities in video games. So I'm going to go ahead and guess that the Spreading Shadow is not eating a sweet, delicious hazelnut spread, and it is rather indeed something associated with a boss or a boss's army, or indeed a sub-boss if you want to get super technical and precise with our language, which sometimes it's fun to do. So the reason I'm saying that is because we have this relationship of a half step from the 1 to the flat 2. Next is Dim Abyss. Not what I was expecting. So let's talk about this little ostinato figure here. It's outlining 2/5. However, the way it's doing it is a little bit more sinister than just that. Because we have a half step here, and then a half step here, those in and of themselves create friction. And after this first half step, the next note is a diminished 5th, or a tritone lower, which creates dissonance in and of itself. So we have minor seconds and tritones, which are 2 of the most dissonant intervals you can have in music. That's it. This chord progression starts with a C major to an A flat, flat 6, to a B flat, flat 7, to a 5 minor. But then instead of going back to C minor, it goes to C major. And so what's really cool about this is that this C major here has an E note as the 3rd. This next chord has an E flat. This next does not have an E flat, but has a B flat, which we normally would not associate with something that starts on C major. Normally you think C major, you know, F, G, A minor, etc. And then here, this chord also has the B flat. And so what it is that these 3 chords here really come from the key of C minor. They're being borrowed, so to speak, in. But, once you have 75% of your chords from C minor and only one chord is from C major, maybe this chord's really being borrowed in from C major and everything else is C minor. It doesn't really matter how you language that. What matters is it sounds. See if that'll do it. All right, so the underlying harmony for this first part of End of All Below, well, we'll call it C sharp minor then. Flat 6 to 4 minor to 1 minor, and then sometimes there is a flat 3 on some of the repetitions. There's a flat 3, and the flat 3 is also kind of like 5, flat 6. I think you're going to like this playlist over here because I made this playlist just for you because you want to get better at creating your own music. Everything in there is just geared towards, well, creating your own music. Examples of me walking you through how to create music, examples of me creating music and talking you through how I'm thinking, even more lessons, deep dives, insights into creating video game music.